Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Panda Awards Show podcast, where we like to interview random people about their technology careers to learn more about them so that way you can get a better career for yourself. So today, I'm joined by my lovely friend, Ben. How are you doing today, Ben?
Man, I've been good. Coming back from my sister having her first newborn, spending a little time with them. Babies are a lot of work. It's underappreciated. How about you, man?
Oh,
How's newborn life?
oh my God, yeah, same for me, right? She is, what day is it? It's a Monday, I think. She's just over 3 weeks old. She's about to turn 4 weeks old tomorrow. So we are slowly learning that 4 weeks is not equal to 1 month. So she'll turn 1 month later this week. But man, it's a joy. I'm tired, I'm enamored, and often bored. But God, what a dream it is to have a kid in your life. Hopefully she stays quiet for this call.
If not, she'll have her first podcast appearance. So there you
Yes,
go.
absolutely. Yeah. So this is going to be one of my favorite episodes because this is our guest is someone super awesome, super special. He's become a friend, he's become a mentor, a colleague, all these different kinds of things, and I think that just kind of embodies the type of person that this guy is. So I'm not going to say his name, even though I know how to say his name. I'm going to have you introduce him as the leader of our fearless panda group.
Yeah, we have Dr. Zoidberg, Mr. Dean, on today. How's it going, Dean?
What's up, everybody? How are you? Who else is coming on the show, Abhi? You were describing somebody that sounded interesting. I assume we're going to have another guest.
I was promised an actual Dr. Zoidberg, so I'm a
I did
little
not know
confused who
this,
you
or I
are.
would already be in costume. I have a doctor coat over there. I have a Dr. Zoidberg mask and lobster claws in a drawer down there. And I have a stethoscope and I have a little reflector thing for your head. So we could have made this work.
That's amazing.
We're gonna have to just cut this one short and then regroup for tomorrow.
I like that plan.
So Dean, like, what is your current job, and what are you doing? Like, what's your day to day today to give people an idea of who you are that don't
Sure.
know who the amazing Dean Trempelas is?
Well, first of all, anybody who thinks I'm amazing has terrible taste. So if you were considering choosing barium as your MSP, you might want to reconsider because clearly Abhi has bad taste. So I work for EmPath, that one, the elephant. EmPath, we are an MSP learning management system and accountability platform. I'm a vendor. So if you're watching this, you're an MSP. I'm on the vendor side now. And it is the most fun I've had in my career in 20 years. Just the best company, cool product. I basically just get to spend all day teaching people and helping people, which is super awesome and very fulfilling. Check back with me in a few years when we've become hopefully a giant corporate driven product and the soul has been crushed, and then ask me if I still feel that way. But for now, it's amazing. And I mostly spend my day in this chair helping MSPs or making educational content, really trying to fill in a lot of the gaps that we've all found exist in our industry. There's, as both there's a lot of vendors make really good training. Ben works for one that has amazing training. A lot of vendors don't. And there are training programs you can get involved with. All the major ecosystems have one, and a lot of those programs are excellent. I used one when I was an MSP, but there's a lot of gaps. There's just stuff that they don't teach you. So we really try to fill in those gaps and then give everybody a way to kind of connect it all together, which is super fun. Imagine if you're a service provider and you're watching this, imagine that whatever you did never impacted revenue. So you never got an angry ticket. It's amazing.
And I think one of the things I love about EmPath is that you guys don't create any content yourselves, right? You're not a content creation company. You get connected to and you bring in the best talent there is in the industry to create content that is directly geared towards the MSPs that are your customers. And then as an MSP, as an administrator for EmPath, we can then put whatever content we have into your platform and use it as a true learning management solution. And
That's
it
the
really
goal.
does make, having you can have your YouTube playlist, you can have your quizzes and your this and your that. You put it all together, and then all of a sudden Dean's face is everywhere, and you have to listen to him talk for an hour. It's
We
it's
do make
it's great.
some content, mostly filling in gaps where I can't find the right content somewhere else. And the goal, usually, if we're making it, is let's hopefully find someone else in the wild who can then make this for us and replace the content we've made. Because we really would rather have the individual genius of all the people in this industry shared for everyone else than just pointing the spotlight on us.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I didn't pay him to say any of that.
Yeah. So, Dean, I've been following you for a while now, and I've seen some of the posts you've made and some of the things you say, and like the way you describe your experiences and the reasoning you're doing things today because of things that have happened in the past. The good and the bad. And as far as I know, we're all millennials. But my curiosity comes, how do you have so much more experience than me if we're in the same generation?
Uh, that's a really good question because it speaks to a challenge a lot of us have with learning in general. Do either one of you play Dungeons and Dragons? Or are you
I
at
dabble.
least familiar with Dungeons and Dragons?
Played a
Yeah.
one shot before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So old school, there's lots of different rules now, but old school classic Dungeons and Dragons, there's basically two primary like mage classes. There's a wizard, or there's some form of what we would have called then a warlock. And a wizard and a warlock, the way they use magic really represents the difference between knowledge and experience. So a wizard has tons and tons and tons of knowledge. They have no raw ability to actually do any magic. They have to study. And so they're constantly accumulating knowledge, and then they're able to compile that together. And a wizard, a good wizard, is going to know, okay, tomorrow I'm probably going to need these 5 spells. So I'm going to study them tonight and write them down and prepare them. But if I need something different in the moment, I'm screwed. On the other side of this, in classic D&D, a warlock is completely experience based. They were born with magic. They haven't studied anything. They don't bother with studying. They only have experience. They have only done things, and they only progress by doing more of it. So technically, a warlock can cast kind of any spell they want. And sometimes, maybe even as many times as they want, even if they never cast it before. It just may not always work when they cast it, and they may run out of whatever mana or whatever they're using to do it. But otherwise, warlock can try anything. And if you play Dungeons and Dragons, what you start to learn is you don't want a warlock in your party unless it is either for the laughs or you have somebody really competent playing them, because all that accrued experience is useless without the knowledge. And you kind of also don't want a wizard in your party, because wizards are super useless if the campaign you're going through basically lasts longer than like a day inside the universe, because they never prep the spells correctly. So either one on their own is kind of useless. And I say all of that to basically go that I don't have more experience than you or anyone else. I do have the benefit of an awful lot of knowledge. And that knowledge with a small amount of experience gives the illusion of competency, which is what I have gone and hoodwinked you with, is the illusion of competency. So that's it. I mean, it really is that simple.
Even after that explanation, I would still have you in my party. Even after that.
You would regret that, because I would be difficult. And I think it's also important, and this is a
I think that's what makes it amazing.
think about this. When's the last time you heard me talk about cybersecurity? I don't.
Actually, I don't think I ever have.
Other than like very surface level roasting the industry that Ben works in, I
Yeah.
largely don't talk about automation. I don't talk about scripting. I generally don't talk about dev. I will not get very far beyond like surface level advanced knowledge on networking, because I don't actually know any of those things. I know enough to have a conversation with somebody who knows more about it than me, but I don't actually know any of those things. Part of it, and this is a problem in our industry in general with thought leadership, I learned early on what I don't know and learn and kind of realize I can't learn everything. I there's no way. So what are going to be the things that I double down on as the things that I feel that I'm smart and able to talk about? And what are the subjects I'm going to avoid or connect back to the stuff I can talk about and just kind of shut up? That is a lesson that a lot of people in our space maybe ought to learn because we have a lot of people in our space that are very good at one thing and talk about everything. You're an MSP. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've met them. You've met other MSP owners where you're like, gosh, golly gee, you should stop talking about that and go back to fixing printers. So a lot of it is avoiding that. And in avoiding that, it comes across as like I'm actually more competent than I am. The entire thing was a sham. You've outed me here on the Panda Awards Show. My career is over. Thanks a lot.
We'll send my condolences to Wes, Alex, and Kyle.
I'm gonna need you to update your LinkedIn tagline to the man who ousted Dean.
Well, do you want to know a dirty little secret, Avi, that we also don't talk about in this industry?
I would love
No
to,
one else knows
because
what they're doing
I
either.
agree. Oh, absolutely. And I think that is always the thing that drives me up a wall is when people think that they're smart. Like as a species, we are not that smart because you can say, "Oh, well, there's so many things we do just we do a lot of things as a species, right? As humans." But then you take like crows and they can use tools and their brains are the size of walnuts. It's like, whoa, that's crazy. There's something crazy about how the human mind thinks that they are the best thing in the world, when in fact, we are just yet another animal on this planet.
In a
And that is
small group setting, though, that is one of our most successful survival strategies. It breaks
100%.
down in a large group setting, which is why
Yes.
you're able to see it. You get a
Yeah.
small tribe of like up to 60 people who all think they're smart, like you just described. And that tribe as a unit is smarter and more powerful than anything else on the planet, which is wild when you realize that's our survival strategy.
That is one thing that I love about like team activities. You take your school, your science clubs, your engineering clubs, your sports teams. These you get these groups of people that are at the top of what they do. Each one of them individually is pretty good. But then you take these 10 individuals, you put them together, and all of a sudden, holy crap, that is an amazing feat of ability. But
Or you're Boston and you take away one person, and we go from being the best in the
well,
country for 20 years to irrelevant, you know?
that's what happens when you rely on one person versus making it the team, right? It
Yeah.
is a team sport. You should invest in the team. Team, team, team.
Which is why you should buy EmPath. Buy now and educate your entire. I'm just kidding.
I always think of like cell phones in this situation. Like, if you threw all of us on an island, none of us are going to figure out how to make a cell phone network on that island in isolation. We're not going to take the sand and make microprocessors and stuff like that. And like each individual part, when you talk to the people that are experts in like phone chipsets or towers, like none of them know what's the other's doing basically. So like
Also, do you
the
want to talk about how to make a PN junction diode with silicon? Because
Hmm.
I can.
Right, you have an EE background, don't you?
You picked literally the only example of something I could actually fake talk about.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, but that also is like the coolest thing I think about humanity. It's like we can accept that we don't know everything, and the faster you accept that and you realize that you are not everything there is, the better you are as an individual, and the better you are as a team player, because you will know how to rely on other individuals that are better at a task than you are. So that way, the outcome for your group, for your company, for whatever your project is going to be the best thing possible rather than the mediocre level of work you can output.
So to bring this back full circle, when you give those examples of like a crow, dolphin, whatever, one of the other things all of those intelligent species show is the ability to generally generationally pass down learned knowledge. So a crow can teach other crows that, hey, like that particular human's a bad human. And future crows that have never met you will know that. Dolphins can teach each other behaviors. Orcas meme. We know that teenage orcas wear fish as hats and they're doing it again as a meme. And so all of it comes back to teaching. And when you sort of started off by saying, how did I get into this? I realized really, really early on in my career in this space, after I had the realization that, wait, no one knows what they're doing, like the little bit of information that was available, I'm like, wow, everyone doesn't have access or awareness of this information. That's horseshit. How can I fix that? So that was how I got involved in all of this 15 years ago, was basically that idea. Like, I'm a crow. I figured out how to bash in this thing and get a shiny out of it. And, Ben Crow and Abhi Crow aren't doing that. Well, that's not fair. They should know how to do that. So
Right.
there you
And
go. That's my entire life
that
story.
that is like the whole reason for an MSP, right? I as the MSP have more institutional knowledge in this subject area than you do as a business owner in a medical practice. You are the subject matter expert in how to fix someone's mouth as a dentist. I am the subject matter expert in how to fix your software and your computer so that you can do your job as a dentist. And that is what makes the system work so well.
Do you have dental clients that don't think they have an honorary degree in computing and know more than you? And if so,
No,
where are
I
they? And can the
actually
rest of
picked
us
that
have them?
I picked that category because that is the one client I pass on to a friend.
It's a good example though, because dentists are so into technology more than other
Yes.
types of business. They love their tech.
But there is so much tech that it is you can learn just enough to be dangerous. And if you can make someone understand that there's so much more nuance to what they're doing than what they understand or realize, that you can help them achieve that next level of productivity, that next
Sure.
level of amazing use of technology. So that way they can still play with it, they can still have their fun, but they don't have to rely on only knowing the surface level amount on however this machine or something works. And I think that's something that a lot of MSPs don't realize is that 90% of our marketing is the education of saying, "Hey, there's more to it than meets the eye." And I think that goes for a lot of industries. It's educating the consumer on how there's so much more involved than what they think.
I think there is probably a marketing shift to that, right? Because we're seeing more of a, at least right, well, it's kind of weird. Like with the millennials, you kind of almost had this savvier generation come in and start to be like the office manager who also does IT stuff. And, you know, it's kind of weird, I guess, because, we're seeing now that the generation after us didn't, like, they were more iPad focused, so they don't have the computer knowledge. But I think there was a brief period where there was that fear of, oh, we're starting to deal with savvier clients and not just the person who doesn't understand technology at all. And now we're almost circling back to that a little bit.
So there's an interesting, you can actually see this repeated with all technology that humanity's invented ever. There's generally a window. So after technology goes from something that you have to sort of self-assemble and develop. So like think of like a farm that has to have a water wheel on the farm. Once you go past to there's a town water wheel. So I no longer have to build the water wheel. You get basically 1 to 1.5 generations of people who will fall into this weird banding of they know everything about keeping that water wheel running, even though they don't have to build one. And then that knowledge will disappear because an economy will pop up of support industries to support that water wheel. And you say with everything. We saw with auto cars. So post World War II, when cars now became real affordable, you having to drop a transmission in your own car in your driveway disappeared. And right, like most of our like grandparents or fathers, if they're old, change their own oil no matter how cheap it got, because that was how they grew up. Is it was not convenient to go to a mechanic. Now most of us might be able to if we look it up, or if we're an enthusiast, but you're just gonna bring it somewhere and have it done. And I mean, do you have
Yeah,
an oil? Do you only have an oil pan at home?
right. I mean, no, it like different kind of oil, but like my grandparents made their own cooking oil, right? Like they grew the crop,
Okay, that's
they
awesome.
harvested the crop, and they processed it to create their own oil so that way they can cook food. Like I couldn't even describe to you how that process works. And yet they did it every single season.
What were they making it out of? What crop? All right. Interesting fun fact about rapeseed oil. So all oils polymerize. So basically their chemical chains turn into longer chemical chains. Rapeseed oil in particular, if you heat it up, so you use it for cooking for a while in a pan and then stop, it will plasticize. Basically, long polymer chains will form a lot quicker than other oils, which is why it is so good for using to coat all of your cast iron stuff. It is basically turning into organic plastic on your cast iron cookware. So
That's kind of
look
cool.
at that.
Kind of terrifying, but kind of
Your
cool.
grandparents not only were self-sufficient, they were chemical engineers that were
Wow.
building basically plastic at home.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Uh, okay, so to circle this all, or to get this back where it gets back on the whole idea of this podcast. Um, I want to know how did how did little Dean get started in technology? What was like your what led you to become someone so involved in the tech space?
Far back do you want to go?
Well, I have a 4-year old 4-week old daughter, so my time scale skewed. You can go back as far to 2 days to like so. I guess the curiosity is like I started my tech career in middle school, so I was 12-ish years old. And similar, we started really young in starting to learn technology in a way that those same skills and that knowledge we gained as children was foundational to what we're doing today as productive members of society, quote unquote productive.
Thank you for the quotes. I got really worried for a minute that you were including me in being productive. It's a lot of pressure.
So I'm curious, like was there something that you kind of feel as the catalyst, and that's what started your career in tech?
Um, yeah, I think so. I'm naturally a curious person. You know, as a child, like wanted to know everything worked, or so at least so I'm told by my parents. But my father was a public school teacher, and we had the good fortune to grow up on Cape Cod, Massachusetts, which is sort of a weird demographics. There's a lot of affluent people there and a lot of very not affluent people. And we fell into the not affluent group, but because it's mixed like that, school systems really well funded. So, very early in the 80s, our school systems always had computers. And every summer, because the buildings here were not air conditioned, because we weren't that affluent, the teachers had to bring home the computer so they wouldn't get like stay in the hot school, you know, whatnot. So starting for probably about like age 5 or 6, whatever was sort of the latest for educational computing. So at that time, it would have been Apple IIe's, and then moving over to like a 286 or 386 with like DOS on it or something. Every summer, I had access to a computer in our house, basically from June, July, August, and I had no internet because there was no internet to the public at that time. And I only had either whatever software came with the computer, software I could somehow code from a magazine, or educational floppies. So played a lot of educational math games back then. If y'all ever want to jump on and play around a Trap-Azoid on a 5 and a quarter floppy on Apple IIe, I'm your guy. I just got really into it. And it got to a point where I exhausted everything I could do on the computer because there was a finite, I didn't, my dad wasn't a computer guy. Like I didn't have access to books that could teach me more. So then it became a matter of, well, if I've run all the programs, typed all the typees, how's this thing work? And I was very much as a child, like asked for forgiveness, not permission, which is not an ideal trait when you're under the age of 18 and is an amazing trait when you're an adult. And so I used to just grab a screwdriver and start taking stuff apart. And it was that right level of technology. Apple II is a great example. There were expansion cards. This is back when we actually still labeled stuff. So expansion cards that have English words on them. Chips had English words on them. The traces were big enough where you could actually kind of figure out what they did. And I got really into that, how it all works. And I destroyed a lot of technology around our house that way that older me regrets. When I got a little bit older, or just maybe in like fifth grade, Massachusetts teachers at that time got like a free dial-up internet thing. I had starting in fourth or fifth grade, I had access to dial-up internet with two parents that didn't know what that meant on a 96 baud modem, just open to the wild world of that there internet, Usenet, IRC, and all of the wonderfully terrible things that were just so freely available at that time. Um, and
It's a
I
great place for a young, impressionable child.
especially one where the parents are able to offer no guidance because the concept isn't even
Yes.
available to their brains. Yes.
Even if that parent is involved in the tech industry at the time, it still was not the same tech as what you found online.
So with the bad also came the good, and I started getting little tastes of like, oh wow, there's way more to computers than like tinkering with an Apple IIe or seeing if I could, jam a 286 into a 386 slot. Why won't this work? Like there's more to just this. And that's kind of where I started discovering the fact that like, oh, like this is a tool. Like people actually use this. Like this isn't just like a nonsense box I have at home. Like this is like a real thing. And so in middle school, we had a all BNC token ring network, and I through the internet and experimentation learned a heck of a lot more than any adult in our district, and ran the project in eighth grade to change our middle school from token ring over to spoken hub Ethernet. And, when I say ran the project, I mean, like, I was the least stupid in the room out of a group of very stupid people. Monkeys in a room with a typewriter will write Shakespeare. I was the one monkey that could kind of type. And all the adults around me gave me a lot of praise for that, and I really liked that feeling a lot. Like, "Ooh, compliments, gimme, gimme, yummy, yummy."
Yes.
And so that was for me, that was where technology lived for a while, which actually led me away from this industry because I did the same thing in high school, helped roll out Windows NT there, get that whole environment set up in a network, and I hit some of the upper limits of what I could do with just sort of showing up. Because at a certain point there, even before we had like proper Active Directory, you kind of need to have a plan at that scale, and I didn't. And it was like late '90s, and adults stopped being as proud of me because I was no longer magically just able to manifest computering. There were smarter adults than me at that point. And so the lack of the praise combined with my entire family all went off to engineering school. I kind of pivoted and said, I'm going to go get a degree in electrical engineering, even though every single engineering college I met with, this is a future note, Abhi, to your child and any other kids watching this. Uh, if you apply to somewhat decent subject matter expert schools, engineering, English, whatever, and the school says to you, love the passion, you're really smart, but we really don't think this is the right program for you. And like three or four of them tell you that. And then one of them says, okay, don't listen to the one that said, okay, listen to the ones that were telling you not to
Yeah.
do it. I wasted a lot of time in school pursuing an engineering degree. I was bad at math, poor student, and that derailed this as a career. I kept on a personal level playing with computers. I was still the guy in the dorm room that people would go to if they wanted, how do we punch outside of the network to do this or that, or, all that kind of stuff. But I just completely abandoned paying attention to this industry as anything other than, like I'm the Napster guy, or, I'm the guy with all the whatever DivX movies at the campus. And it actually took failing out of school a few times where I met my wife at a summer math class because she was smart and compressing 2 degrees into 3 years. And I was dumb and was in my seventh year of what should have been done. Um, and we got an apartment together and she's like, you need to get a job. I'm like, what can I do? Like, what can Dean do? I had worked for a while in high-end home automation and AV, which was a wonderful industry, but I didn't really want to go into rich people's houses and hang TVs anymore. By the way, I have hung 471 TVs in my life on every surface imaginable. So I do keep track. Like, what can I do? And I saw an ad on Indeed for a place. It was called Think Tech Computers. And I'm like, computers, I know computers. I've done computers my whole life. People have been complimenting me on my computering. Like, I can do that. And like read the job description and it was, some sort of like level 2, MSP job. I didn't know what that meant. Read through everything on there's like Windows and servers, like whatever. I know what servers are. I know what Windows is. Like I had a movie server. Like I got this in the bag. Like confidently went in my, suit and shirt and tie, like a jackass, and sat down with the owner of this MSP that was maybe about like 5 or 6 people, and just embarrassed the hell out of myself in a technical interview for like a level 2 support role. Cause it turns out I knew basics. That was it. Like, hey, Dean, talk to me about migrating the FSMO roles on SBS 2003. Like, what are FSMO roles? What are you talking about? That's where I was at. And so thankfully I still got hired there initially as an account manager. And that was really where my MSP, my real like technology career started, was getting that job at that company. It was the right place at the right time for the right owner that had spent long enough being frustrated trying to grow the business. And I didn't know as much as I thought about being a tech, but I knew a lot from my life about people and process and kind of managing those environments. And I started pretty much from day one walking around being like, that's wrong. That's stupid. And one of the first things that I noticed out on the tech floor, the guys would collect equipment, new equipment to go to customer sites. This is like 2009. And there'd be boxes there of customer equipment, some of which I had ordered months ago. Like, why is this not installed yet? Like, oh, well, we're waiting till we have enough gear saved up to go on site to make the on site worth it. And this is before I knew all the things I know about business now, but I'm like, well, that's fucking dumb. And I was very, very open about articulating stuff like that and being like, what are you doing? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, and I just kind of started ordering people around. And instead of getting fired, my boss pulled me aside and said, how would you like to become a service manager? And that was really, for me, that was the opening credits of the very first Zelda game when I got handed my sword and was told it's dangerous to go alone. Here, take this. And, moved out into Hyrule and was like, oh, no way, I can stab stuff. And that's kind of where the journey began.
How was that perceived when you go in? Obviously, you've got guys that have probably worked there longer than you, and you're making all these suggestions. Were they open to it? Were they resistant? How was young Dean perceived?
What an amazingly perceptive question that, had I had a time machine, I would go back and ask myself. Of all of the people that worked there at that time, and I worked for this MSP for over a decade as we grew, only 2 people did not quit or were encouraged to leave. So not great. Early on, I was a yeller. I still had very low emotional intelligence, but I was much worse then. I tended to speak to them very plainly, like, are you stupid? What are you doing? Like, this is dumb. People don't like that. So that was an important lesson to learn. It also served the purpose, quite accidentally, of clearing out a lot of folks that were probably not the right fit for a MSP model, that were more the fit for like a break fix shop. That was certainly not because I was a business genius back then. That was just luck, I guess. But yeah, no, not well received. I threw a chair in my first year across the service floor, and one of the only 2 employees who stuck around, who's actually my neighbor now, right moment, pulled me aside And he was like, "Hey man," he was our senior tech. He was like, "You can't talk to people like that." I was like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean?" He's like, "You can't yell at people like that." I'm like, "I'm not yelling. I'm just explaining what needs to happen." He's like, "You're yelling. You just threw a chair." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I pushed the chair. I was just explaining." He's like, "Dean, you just yelled at the entire room and threw a chair." And he's like, "No one's ever going to listen to you if that's how you talk to them. It doesn't matter that you're correct." And he was like, "And for the record, I agree with everything you said, and I still don't want to listen to you." And I was like, "Whoa." Like every now and then someone just tells you something and I'm like, whoa.
Mhm.
And that was what caused me to start thinking more critically about, all right, how do I arrive at that same outcome? So I still throw chairs in my mind, but if I can't yell at you, how else can I get you to do the right thing? And that's kind of where I discovered this whole concept of, like process and having a particular way that you guide people through and allowing you to feel like you're winning and that you're learning and improving. And wow, you'll naturally comply with the outcome I want, and super fun. That only happened because this guy named Nick pulled me aside one day and was like, "Hey man, stop being an asshole."
It really showcases how even if you have a passion and a love for technology, maybe the actual technology is not your destiny, and it's everything around it. And you can still be involved in the technology, but your day to day won't be manipulating the tech. It's going to be managing the person that manipulates the tech, something like that, right? And that's kind of like where you fell in, where you were in love with technology. You were like, I can do everything I want to do with this computer. There's a lot more than I realize. Cool. And then the second thing, isn't it amazing how you can just be going about your life, doing whatever it is you're doing, thinking you are the sun, the moon, and the earth. And then someone puts you in your place, and you're like, and you feel devastated almost. Like this person that I respect, this person that I look up to has just told me I'm an asshole, and I feel hurt. And then 2 days later, you're like, not even 2 days, it's like a decade later, you look back on it, you're like, thank God they said something to me.
Yep,
Because that was
absolutely.
literally the pivotal moment that made me a better person. And shout out to all of the mentors, the moms, the dads, the teachers, the bosses that have the wherewithal to actually say something and care, because it has made all three of us much better people than before that point in time.
And it's funny too because you don't always know that you were that. But like this case, Nick has the fortune of knowing he was that person. A lot of times you are that person for someone else and you'll never know. You will never know that your word, your sentence, your throwaway line one day you said has echoed in their head and caused them to rethink their entire existence.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and it's almost a different kind of love and like risk to provide that kind of candid feedback. Like it's a different level of engagement and just caring, honestly.
So what I've learned so far now that kind of know your story, Dean, is that you're a early millennial. Ben and I are somewhat late millennials. So that explains the age gap that in my head was like 2 days is actually more than a couple.
I'm 41. I don't know how old you two are,
Oh,
but that
okay.
gives
I'm
you an idea.
33.
Okay.
30s.
Wee baby.
Yeah, yeah. But based on your story, I'm like, dang, if I grew up in Massachusetts, I would have been Dean. So like now in 7 years, my MSP will have grown to becoming a $200 million a year revenue generating empire, and I'm going to sell and then work for the dark side. So whatever empath 2.0 is, that is evidently based on your story what my track will lead to.
So would you like to know? I can actually, on this podcast, I can disclose the actual industry secret to how to do that. Because there is a formula to specifically do what you've just said you want to do in that time. Maybe
No, no,
that
not
shouldn't have
want,
named
not
it.
want. It is your story is my story, just earlier.
Yes. So there is a secret And other podcasts would charge you, the listener, thousands of dollars to learn this business secret. But we're going to share it right here on the Panda Awards Show for the low, low price of $0 and simply liking and subscribing. So, everybody ready for this? This is how you're going to change in 7 years from being where you are to being a multi-million-dollar MSP. Luck. It's called
Mhm.
luck. And everything, when I joined Think Tech, we were about 700K total revenue, a business that had been in business since 1994, had switched from break fix to MSP in the early 2000s, and it just sort of just circled around, never really getting any bigger or smaller, with about 7 employees, a little staff heavy. And that was it, with an owner who was dedicated, hardworking, was the business, and they weren't growing. And yeah, I came in, and after I learned what I was doing, added a lot of process and procedure, and we grew to about 2.5 ish million. And that was it. And that's where we would still be to this day for all that hard work. All that mattered, the only major difference, and this is what really aggravates me a lot about business coaching, all that work we did, all that made us ready for was the minute luck stumbled through our door, we were able to make the right decision. And that's what catapulted us. It was not, no one at the bit. I know a lot about operations, a lot more than the average service manager. Well, I knew all that then, and that didn't magically make us bigger. My boss was in every single coaching and mentorship group you can imagine, and he knew every sales technique. He had been through all of it, and that also was not magically landing us more money and more clients. All the work we did, though, meant that when weed was legalized in Massachusetts, and we got a random phone call from what would end up becoming a very, very large now Canadian distributor, they called us and they said, "Hey, we're going to be building a new plant, new production facility right next to the new Amazon facility that just went in, in like kind of right down the street from us." And they were like, "We're looking for a couple local companies to come and do a bid, basically to build out the project for this." 5 years ago, I would have said no to it. I would have told my boss, "We can't do this. We don't have time to do one-off large projects. Not what we do." But all the work we'd put in meant we were stable. Where I was like, screw it. Sure, we could probably do this one project. We could dedicate these resources. So we said yes and showed up. That was it. And we were the only company that said yes and showed up and actually submitted a bid. And so we got that.
That's crazy. Wait, not only like it's already hard enough to win the bid, you were the only one that submitted a bid?
The only one that showed up, walked the
Okay,
site, and then
I
submitted a
see.
bid. So a few
Okay.
people came to like the pre-meeting, but just hemmed and hawed, weren't ready. We were just stable enough compared to our local competitors where I was like, I can dedicate the people to focus on this nonsense. Whereas a few years ago, I would have been like, we don't have time to focus on this nonsense. That landed us a big project, which was fun. That still wasn't the big bit of luck. The big bit of luck afterwards was they turned around and they're like, "Hey, so there's a lot of OT and IoT here and IT here. And the local police department has all these requirements they want for security." Because this was like right
Yep.
when marijuana first became legal
Yes.
anywhere. And they're like, "Can you help us with this?" And once again, client size that was totally out of our ICP was able to be like, "Yeah, sure. This one time, sure, we can do it." And saying yes to both of those things is what then catapulted us for a few years to being the MSP on the East Coast of Massachusetts for cannabis, which now caused us to get all of this revenue. We were able to be flexible due to a lot of processes we had built with them being cash only, because at that time they would build vaults in these distributors because they were cash only. And that just got a ton of business in, got the gears flowing. That built us up. By the time that industry got bought by PE and they pulled back all those things, we had enough momentum and money and people. We were like, cool, what's the next fun thing we're going to do? We went after veterinary clinics for like animals. None of that would have been possible had we not put in the work and then gotten lucky. That was it. Just got lucky.
Now, at this point, when you're focusing in on cannabis, are you creating like unique marketing sites for cannabis, or is it just word of mouth, or like how are you growing that side of the business?
Boy, that would have been smart. So it was early enough, and this is what I mean about luck. It was so early in that industry that there was a dozen people in it, and they all knew each other. So it was that perfect spot. If we had said yes a year later, it would not have happened. We probably would have still grown, but I'd probably still be working at that MSP, and we'd be your generic like $5 to $10 million regional MSP. Was we were in the exact right place to say yes to someone that was supremely well connected that was like, "Here, meet my friends." And they were like, "Meet my friends." 2 years later, that rug got ripped right out because PE came in and bought them all.
Everyone that was giving you every single point of business that you gained from that was because it was a new market, new industry, kind of new thing happening, and their source of getting finding someone in that area is the small tight knit community of, you know, 5 cannabis growers that all need to know each other because they're all vested in the same thing. It's like, hey, do you know somebody? Yeah, I do. Cool. Okay, we'll use that. And it's the same thing. And that mindset is something that everyone needs to realize, that if you look at every single piece of marketing, what is the number one same thing that they always say? Right time, right place. Right? That is so common. And how do you get to the right time and the right place? Pure luck. It just happens. Right? There's no predicting it. If we could predict it, it'd be two companies, not one, not 7,000, right? Not even so what, like 70
So it's
million
some
companies
of
in
it
the US?
is also the, like, you gotta have money to make money thing. So, like, the luck is really helpful when you're breaking over that early maturity. Because even, like, a $2 to $3 million MSP, that's not bad. And if you're, a $2 to $3 million MSP, somewhere around 50% on your managed services, like, that's not a bad business. You're doing better than, like, 7 like, you're in the top 7% of all small businesses in the United States. But even at that size MSP, which maybe has maybe 20 people, you don't really still have the cash to just dump it on something temporarily. Your war chest is probably still the, "Oh shit, I don't want to fire anybody" war chest. It's not the rainy day fund. And that's where the luck's important when you're at that point. Because once we got a little bit bigger and had the money and the process and the people, it was much easier to be like, all right, we're going to pivot to another industry. We're going to learn, how to market now since we didn't before. So we're actually going to market to veterinary clinics. We're going to pick a line of business software in their industry, say we're experts on it. We're going to go to their events, their shows, speak their language. We wouldn't have really been able to do that in a meaningful, scalable way until we got that money that we got by being in the right place and saying yes to the right thing.
I think that's something that people don't always realize is that, yeah, you need to have money to make money, you need to spend the money to make money, all that stuff too. But just the sheer fact of being able to say, that I think that thing is going to make us $1,000.
Yes.
Good thing I have $100 to spend today to give me access to that $1,000. And you 10x that, 100x that, whatever you want, right? But that's the concept, is that you have to have the ability to make the decisions no matter what. If you don't have the ability to make the smart decision that is a smart decision, you can't do it. And so
And
it's little by
yeah.
little, you have to keep growing and growing and growing until that luck hits and you have the capacity
And here's
to
here's
make it
the hardest
happen.
part about all of that. If you're how big is Barium right now? How many people?
Pretty small. 2 people full time.
Okay. So here's the problem when you tell that to an MSP owner at your size. Literally the only reason why you have a company is because you had basically a certain amount of ego to believe in yourself, to push forward,
Mhm.
make something happen, and basically say yes to whatever you could. So your business gets started by saying yes to everything. And then you have to hit this point, which good luck figuring out what the exact point is. It's not a formula, but it's this natural point where you have to stop that. You have to stop what has literally made you successful and allowed you to support another person's career. You have to stop doing that for a long time until you can start doing it again. And that is so hard for an entrepreneur to do. It's easy for me as an outsider, sort of it's very easy for the first mate of the Titanic to be like, that's an iceberg. There's not enough boats. We have a problem. It's a lot harder for the captain of the ship to be that objective, especially if they also own the ship and just spent however many years building the ship, largely with their own sweat equity. And that is a problem that we have in this space still is at some point, like for you, Abby, you're going to get to a point where some of the ways you currently operate, you'll have to stop, even though they are objectively the reason why you've had enough success to stop doing them.
Absolutely.
I mean, imagine,
Absolutely.
imagine trying to teach that lesson to your baby that like there are behaviors you're going to learn as a child that you're going to have to turn off one day, even though the only reason you're still alive right now is because you have trusted those behaviors every day since birth. That's really, really, really counterintuitive. That was what the prep was. When I talk about the prep for the luck, the prep was getting us to a point where at an ownership and at a direction level, we had calmed everything down where Nate, the owner, did not feel compelled to just say yes to random stuff or do random sloppy nonsense. We had stabilized everything where everything was a no, which allowed us the clarity in basically the availability to say yes to the right thing. So it's all the efforts are not worthless, but you're not necessarily going to magically see an instantaneous return because you focused on whatever you're trying to mature or refine in your business. Some of it is luck, and organic sales, especially organic services sales, is one of the hardest types of things to sell ever. So MSP owners, especially smaller ones, you are playing the game on hard mode the same way that every other service business is. If you want a fun example, go on YouTube and look up videos on how to start and scale a lawn care business in like your local area. And you'd be like, whoa, this is exactly what MSP people are saying. And this kind of sounds like it sucks. Like, yeah, it sure does. Scaling a service business is hard.
Absolutely. And I think that's the I think
What's
that
that say? What's that say about you for doing that?
either two things. One, I'm way overconfident, or I'm insane, and I'm hoping that I'm just plainly insane. Because insane seems
Could
a
be
lot
both. It could be
safer.
two things.
I think getting, like you said, getting that foundation level is key. I don't think they'd mind me telling this, but when I was in my MSP, we were trying to get this really large contract, and we're bringing in like the big wigs from this company and everything, and we had like our neighboring tenants come in and pretend to work there, so they would think that we would have more people than we did. um, and
I
then
don't think that's a bad thing. That's like really common, apparently.
yeah, the other part that it kind of reminded me of is honestly like when I was when I was thinking about joining Roos, and I'm like, Dean, how is it on the dark side? They were willing to give me a shot and everything, and I figured I'd get in there and all the processes are going to be perfect and there's going to be nothing to improve. And then you get here and like, oh, you guys have done this to get here. So there is actually some things to improve.
Had
It's
you
not all
never
just
talked to
magic.
Aaron before you worked there? It's like a beautiful dumpster fire. It's amazing.
And that's everywhere, dude. One of my first tech jobs, that was tech adjacent, right? I worked for AT&T, 100-year-old company, has been
Yeah.
around for decades throughout this, and that. Like my checks came from Bell South, not from AT&T. So even more like the intricacies of how you run a multifaceted organization that is one quote unquote one organization and not segmented, right? No. The baby bell still existed. Even that, right? We had literal manuals on how to do every single thing. You did everything by the book, except for everything that you had to do by the book, right? It was like, oh, this one little thing is different. What do we do now? Well, whatever works. Just figure it out. It's like, oh, how do I safely crawl through an attic and or like in a crawl space and wire the house up? It's like, well, you just kind of get it done safely. Here's a
So
mouse.
were you a cable monkey back then?
Yeah, yeah.
What is the worst thing either in a crawl space or an attic that you realized once you were too far in there on your back to do anything about that you discovered was there with you alive or dead?
I learned, and this is the weirdest part. I learned how deathly allergic I am to cats.
Well, that's gross. If any of you did not work where you went into consumer houses in a past life, there are people who don't really keep their cats as clean as you'd like, and then there are those people where you get into, especially the basement crawl space, because the cats go in there. It's a wall; it just hits you, and
Yep,
you're like, "Wowee! I still have to do my job."
yep, yep. And there were the homes where you just like you always like go to the home first. You introduce yourself, and you learn not to take your stuff inside. Like, oh, you need to bring in your tools? Don't bring the tool bag. Just bring the exact tools you think you'll need. Hard plastics, metals, things you can clean because there's some stuff crawling around.
Did you ever have a house you walked into? You're like, "Wow, I'm gonna die here today. This is
Yeah.
the last thing I do,
Yep.
and it's gonna be to install a telco demarc." And
Yep.
I'm
Exactly.
proud of that.
And that job is actually what taught me that former inmates are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet.
I believe that.
Like they are amazingly. They don't want to do anything wrong. They're like, I just got out. I want to be a good person. It's like, hey, look at that. That's perfect. That lady over there is just really mean. I'm gonna hang out with you, the person with a criminal record, because you're a safer option right now.
I was afraid, as somebody who loves dogs now, like obsessively, I was actually afraid of dogs when I was first doing residential wiring. And I was at so when you work in houses where these are casual second or third houses that are like 14 to 20 million dollars in like 2002 money, um and you've got your drop cloths. These are high end company drop cloths set off, your booties on, very clean, and a little dog walks in and eats like a coax clipping, where the braid is out there, and you're like, wow, that dog is probably a $10,000 dog and it's about to die. And boy, I'm sure going to get blamed for that. That's how I got over my fear of dogs. The first time I had to jam my hand down some Yorkie's throat to pull out a piece of RJ6 that it had just eaten up. And I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And I'm like, maybe these furry little critters are all right.
And look at that. You saved a small dog, and now you have a small dog.
40 pounds. She's a bit of a chungus.
The pictures do not show that she's 40 pounds.
Small in size, built like a pit bull.
That was a huge thing that we learned at AT&T, because as a large company, they need to really protect themselves and make sure that lawsuits don't happen, because lawsuits are easy and they come dime a dozen as a large company. A thing that they said to us in training was, you don't know what you don't know. Meaning, you are setting up the internet for a company, a client, or whoever, the customer. Does every single customer needs to be treated with the utmost respect, and you need to make a perfect installation every single time, because you don't know if the person you're installing the internet for is just wanting it to watch Sunday Night Football, or it's because they need a medically Wi-Fi internet connected pacemaker that is going to keep them from dying, or other medical devices, right? You have no idea. And the same goes for those trimmings. It was like, clean up after yourself, because you don't want to be the one that is told that someone's baby just ate your junk and is in the hospital. And imagine how you'd feel if that happens in real life. And I can only imagine how you felt when it was happening in front of you. And I bet after that happened, you never made a mess ever again, because you're like,
we were already, to your point, we were already a brand that at that time that was probably the most famous for how actually white glove we were. Like, actually, like, properly cleaning your house and keeping a workspace that was something that you might actually be comfortable even having guests around while we were working. And that just caused you to take it even more seriously. But I have a question for you. Were you paid by the job or by the hour? So you paid hourly, or you paid a commission on the work you did?
I was paid hourly.
So, interesting fact I have found is, if you want to hire really good, generally speaking, really good MSP staff, and you want to save a few bucks in terms of not having to hire some other MSPs pre-trained level 3, but you kind of want to get somebody that has that customer awareness that Abhi just explained, where you go into every client's house, and for the moment that is your house, and you kind of treat it with that sort of a mentality. Find people that worked in residential, like Wire Monkey or installation services. They're actually paid by the job. They're paid a commission. And find people who liked it and were annoyed when they got laid off, because those are going to be people that not only embody all of the customer service elements that Abhi just explained naturally, they also are people who are hyper incentivized to be efficient, because the more efficient they were, the higher their per dollar was. Those are some of the best MSP hireable people that you can find, if you can find them.
You made a post or something that was like, hiring the McDonald's employee.
Mm-hmm.
Hiring that service worker is probably going to be the best hire for you, compared to hiring someone that is tech first. Because as an MSP or as a service company, you need to find someone that is, like you said, service oriented mentally, because the tech is pretty easy to teach, to be honest, right?
It's
We have
yeah.
empath.
So we were talking. Remember, we were talking earlier about like entrepreneurs, and there's a certain amount of, and I mean it within a nice way. There's a certain amount of ego and self confidence you have to start a business, especially a business where you sell a service that you deliver. It's different than like I make candles and I sell them at the craft fair. Like you're basically saying I am the product, and if you're successful with that, your natural inclination, because you probably didn't spend your whole life working in HR, is well, I know what made me good at this. I must need to go hire another Abhi, or, I need to go hire another Ben. And 95% of the time, not always, but almost always, that is an abysmal failure. But it is what most entrepreneurs tend to do, some in perpetuity. But probably up until they get about like 3 or 4 employees. And then from there, most smart entrepreneurs will recognize like, oh, wow, like Abhi, the employee is super toxic because they're all of the things that I think I'm good at, but they don't have any of the entrepreneurial spirit that I have because they're not a business owner. And that's actually the worst combination of my traits. And I hate that person. So then you typically skew the other way. You're like, all right, I don't want that to happen again. I'm only going to hire people that already know what they're doing. And besides the fact that it's very expensive and that's becoming more and more challenging to quantify already knowing what you're doing, you run into the opposite end of that problem that we see that's I mean, my crass example is that's basically going and finding like your friend's girlfriend that's been their girlfriend for 5 years and being like, now I'm gonna date you because I know you know how to girlfriend. Yes, with your friend, not with you. Is if you're lucky and this person has a lot of self-awareness, will they figure that out quickly and edit it and realize that you're not the same as your friend? Sure. But are most of us that self-aware? No. So now you get what we see a lot of those MSPs get. They get the 1 or 2 people that do know everything and have the chops, but they won't change. They won't enter notes. They won't comply with anything because they're at this opposite end of their career. And I found that once you've gotten to that point, probably like 3 to 5 employees, where it is practical for you to really start thinking about hiring as a strategy, not just do they have a pulse? Can they tolerate me? Most entrepreneurs have a less painful ride by simply trying to hire truly entry level people and putting the time in to training them and keeping them. Kind of the same logic as it's cheaper to keep generally an existing client than to go find a new one once you've learned what types of clients are a good fit for you. If you are still like on your own or like under 3 employees, you need to run a business. You probably don't have all the time in the world to be hiring babies and training them. Although it's wonderful if you do that, you probably do need to hire somebody who knows a little bit more. But very quick, that creeps up on you. And what's funny is the realization you need to do that versus your MSP being in a state to make you be able to do that are 2 very different things. And most MSPs have not fundamentally approached client support and technology delivery from a standpoint of, I need a level 1 to be able to do everything here. And that then becomes the next maturity hurdle. And by luck and situational circumstances where MSP was located, that's what we went through. I could not retain high level talent because that was before remote work. And anyone that was decent after a year, they would leave and they would go to Providence or Boston and get a $20,000 increase, stay my friends, still show up to bowling if you're not to bowling. But yeah, no, I have a real job now, Dean. Thanks for training me though. Bye.
Yeah.
And that taught me that like, okay, like we're clearly good at recruiting people and we're clearly good at training them, but like this isn't working. I can't keep hiring. I can't keep needing level 2 and level 3 people here because I can't keep them. We can't pay that much. So it was all right. If I'm good at hiring them and I'm good at training them, how do I make it so I don't need level 2 and level 3 people like almost ever? And that was a long journey. Stack alignment, simplification, realizing we were overcomplicating a lot of stuff. It's part of why I'm so vocally anti automation and AI, not because automation or AI is bad, it's amazing, but because I had to go through this journey where I was like, shit, we can't have the fancy stuff until we learn how to make mac and cheese at home. We can't have, filet mignon until I learn how to flip a burger. Like we had to do all the basic stuff repeatedly. that's kind of gross and awful and painful. And especially if the owner hasn't figured that out, imagine a future employee coming back to you and be like, Abby, everything you have done to build up Barium over the last 10 years, yeah, we're done with that. We're actually now only going to sell, I don't know, watch guards. And you're like, whoa, watch guards? Like, what kind of MSP do you think we are? You said dental. So what kind of MSP do we think, you think we are? Like, one that needs a very entry level firewall I can train anybody how to do the basics on in a day or less. Like, that's very challenging to hear as an owner, where you're like, I mean, you're just giving a speech earlier about how important it is to explain how complicated technology is. And like, I'm now being like, yeah, shut up about that. No, it's not. And you're like, wow, dude, it kind of sounds like you're saying we're a commodity. And I feel kind of gross. And like, my entire entrepreneurial career has been a sham. Like, yeah, it is a commodity in a little bit, but that's okay. Like,
And but like, I think it, people kind of shy away from that, or they're like disgusted that MSPs are a commodity. How many things do you deal with on a day-to-day basis that are pretty commoditized and yet are still vital to you as like your way of life? Like, you don't go to the grocery store and be like, ah, yes, I'm shopping at Target today because it is substantially different in what they offer compared to Walmart or Amazon or whatever,
I wear
right?
my fancy shoes for
Yeah, right. Like, it is a building that has
yes.
products that you pick up on your own and then you take out, and you have to now check out yourself. Right? There's not even a person to do the payment for you. Do it yourself. Right? And
And
so like,
what's funny about that is, like, the reason why you might go to Walmart over Target or Amazon for that type of product largely is going to be convenience and price.
yeah,
And right,
absolutely.
I mean, that's commodity generally traded on price. How many MSPs do we know that will gnash their teeth and say, we're not a commodity, who absolutely almost only compete on price, which is the only way to, it's, which I've always found to be really funny, is like, you're already doing it, just accept the term, own it, and then realize that, like, Capital Grill's a commodity. That's a chain restaurant. You can be high end and still be a chain restaurant. Like, that's okay.
Isn't like, there's a lot of things out there that are super expensive that are commodities,
I'm not
right? Like,
saying it's the highest end, but like a nice Marriott, that's a franchise.
yeah, yeah. Not even just any Marriott, right? Like, your quick name a 5-star hotel. Because obviously I am
Four
poor and don't go to
Seasons,
Four Seasons, right?
Waldorf Astoria,
Waldorf Astoria, great hotels, absolutely amazing. How many of them are there? How many of them are owned by Marriott or Hilton or whomever? Right? Not no, none, absolutely zero. Or even the your Gaylord hotels, right? So like the epitome of customer service and hospitality. Yeah, they're owned by Marriott, right?
Kind of an aspect of this as well, but also to an earlier comment. I'm curious, why do you think so many MSPs are stuck on being the white glove provider when they're not? Like, everybody says they're white glove, and then the reality
I
is they
do.
sell the same
I say
stuff.
it.
I,
Yeah.
I think for a couple of reasons that all intermix. So there's not one answer, but the first one is most MSPs don't know what that word means. Only because I grew up in an area where I got to do like cable monkey stuff in extreme affluence and celebrity houses and stuff like that, that I even get to see like people who literally have like 30 live-in staff that move with them house to house. Like, white glove is a term that comes back from like basically being in like gentrified England, having a live-in house staff, and you have a butler type person like Alfred the butler, and literally wearing white gloves. And the reason they wore the white gloves was to signify that not only was the property in the house super clean that they could wear the white gloves, that they, as the head of the scum, the peasants, the house staff, were the most clean and fit to be around and almost considered like a family member by the host family. So that's what white glove means. And if you want to kind of interpret it a little less colonial and think about like Batman, like Alfred the butler wears white gloves and any iteration of Batman. And if you think about like, what does Alfred always do? Alfred surprises Bruce Wayne in the Batcave with stuff. Like, Bruce Wayne will discover he needs something. He'll turn around and Alfred's standing there with the thing that Bruce only figured out he needed, that Alfred figured out he needed an hour and a half ago. And there have been plenty in animated, comic book, and movies where he is literally scared Bruce Wayne. Like that. That is actual white glove service. Having a level of understanding your charge, the person or the people you're taking care of, better than themselves. Where like Alfred is probably smarter than Bruce Wayne in most things Bruce Wayne thinks he's smart about, and never once makes Bruce Wayne feel stupid, but anticipates everything he needs before he needs it without getting a speck of dust on his fingies. That is actual white glove. Well, right away, if you're running a service company of any type, you're not that, because you you literally can't be. You don't live with the people. You don't have one client. You don't know them that well. You're not going to never have dirt on your fingers. So that's one of the problems. Is there's just a fundamental misunderstanding of it, and it's become this sort of like fantasized theatrical idea of like this 1950s Maytag man style of service provider. So that's the one issue. I think the other issue is that for a lot of service providers, they don't actually know what they do. And they know they fix computers, but they don't really know what the product is. They never really have time to sit down and really think about like, what am I fundamentally doing here? And like in Abhi's case, he got to work in a job before this that taught him about outcomes. It taught him that we're here. I mean, he literally told us, I'm here for an outcome that I may not understand. And part of my job while I'm here is to discover that if I can, but independent of it, make sure this person can arrive at that outcome. A lot of people who start MSPs, they just don't know that. And so in their mind, at a certain point, they figure, and that's why I use the lawn care service analogy. At a certain point, they figure, well, my product must be the blades of grass I'm cutting. I mean, that's kind of what you're paying me for. So that must be it. And if that's all you have, well, boy, do you run up against the ceiling pretty quick where you have to start being like, well, how do I differentiate? And well, you know, my lawnmower is the cleanest Husqvarna lawnmower in the entire tri-state area. We truly are a white glove lawn service. We vacuum up all your clippings. And like, no one really cares about that. And I think the last part is that there's a certain amount of people who maybe understand a little bit of that, but they're tired and they're scared of kind of how fast this industry moves super fast. That's scary, and that's a nice safe little warm hole to crawl up in and be like, we're a customer service focused organization, we're best in class. And it feels so
Right.
cozy and warm. You feel like you have the moral high ground. And I think all those factors combined in different ways to get an owner to kind of feel comfortable saying we're white glove.
I'm curious and what you're so based on like, that idea that you can't if you want to commoditize or you don't want to commoditize, there's this that whatever it is, like there was one particular thing you said. A lot of MSPs, it's like their way or the highway. Like, oh, you don't want my Sophos firewall? Then we won't do business with you. But there was something you said that made me think of that.
Well,
Crap.
let's run with that for a minute. So right now, you have 100% authority and accountability because you have two people at your MSP. You are the business. That does
Absolutely.
give you the ability right now to not indefinitely, but pretty much rationalize any decision you need to make or have made in any context you want to. And it also means that you have 100% control over Abhi. So you kind of can, at your size, offer something that is close to actual white glove. That falls apart real quick once you have other humans working for you because they're not you. And even if you hire the best possible humans, none of them are ever going to have the level of accountability and authority that you have to yourself. They are never going to be able to rationalize decisions or provide quite the same level of decision making in situ as you ever will. And so there you run into that it's very hard to scale a high degree of service, very hard to scale the service level you bring to your clients at your size right now. And the only way to have a shot at doing that is to standardize. And the only way to ensure that you really can standardize without being supremely excellent at selling, which you've met MSPs, that's no one in the industry, is to take it from the other stance and say it's my way or the highway. So MSPs that say that is, it might be obtuse and it might be a little bit unglamorous in the delivery. That is a very, very direct way of saying, we know that if we align you to our way of doing it, we have a guaranteed expectation level or close to that we can execute with our team. And we know if we deviate from that, that diminishes. And if it diminishes too far, which is a very slippery slope, we are suddenly worse than Abhi, the two-man shop down the street, and we'll lose our business to you. So that's weirdly enough, as much as it might seem off-putting from a like consumers' rights standpoint, is one of the only ways you're going to grow a service business. And
That's
if you want
true.
support of
That's
that,
true.
going back to McDonald's, and I know the food is kind of crap, you can go into a McDonald's anywhere in the entire world right now, and accepting for local customs and ingredients, you don't need to speak a word of the local language to order off the menu and have a very high degree of confidence of exactly what you're going to get.
And
And it's
actually,
not because
that's
McDonald's is
a huge thing. There's a big thing about, like, during the Olympics, athletes will eat McDonald's not because of sponsorships, but because they know what to expect.
yep,
They know
and they
what the
also know
food
what to
is.
expect with their gut
Yeah,
with McDonald's.
exactly. They know where the food is coming from, and that is it. Think about how logistically impossible it is to achieve that, and yet
So
they do.
there's a ship in the Pacific. It is the largest whitefish fishing ship in the world that can do full processing on board. And while it's not owned by McDonald's, about 90% of the whitefish that ship processes goes directly to McDonald's. McDonald's has bought or leased, or not technically bought, but bought pretty much all of the farms that make all of their potato products. So when you get to a certain level
Lay's
of
does the same thing,
consistency
I
and
believe.
scale, yeah, you have to eliminate variables. If you want to look at it from a different way and not something like shitty like McDonald's, like when's the last time you bought an Apple product? Think about I don't really love Apple, but think about how Apple is packaged. Everything you buy from Apple is packaged the same way. And it's packaged so that once you learn how to open one Apple product, it's the same way to open every other Apple product, which means that if you go buy a new Apple product, you automatically know the order you're going to open the boxes in, roughly how it goes together, where it's probably muscle memory. All of that comes back to actually Apple, Disney, Bose, all these brands that we think of as like having this level of service. It's them significantly limiting your options and curating you into a very narrow channel of you are only going to buy what we tell you to buy, or just totally get fucked. And that's what they're telling you. And they do it in a way that's so well delivered that you're like, yummy, yummy, yummy. Please give me more of that. I absolutely will pay $3,000 for an $800 laptop. Right. That's the joke in our industry. But that is that idea of coming in and saying you need to standardize on my stack. That's an MSP kind of grasping at trying to move forward with that concept in a very caveman like way.
Yeah, no, that is so true, and it's hard for people to. It's really hard for people to just generally realize that. Like, it takes them a lot of effort for that to be made. Them to make them aware that that's just like the way it is. It's not a bad thing. It's the way kind of you have to be, and it's okay. It's kind of good. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
So the big thing, and this goes back to some of our earlier conversations about growing the business, is how do we take that as a given that really with any services company at a certain point you're going to have to force standardization if you want to grow until you're big enough to afford clients so you don't have to do that anymore. How do you do that without vomiting in your mouth, without being gross, without being the MSP that comes in and like, I don't care that you just bought, this entire, I don't know, Sonic Wall setup or Meraki setup. You're ripping it out tomorrow and buying our Sophos stuff. Like, how do you do that without having terrible morals or, just feeling gross? And a lot of it is, well, how do we look at all the other elements of MSPing and figure out how to make this a really fun, easy, approachable experience for the clients? And a lot of folks just don't take it that far because they never give themselves enough time to trust that that's possible. And it's like you have a daughter, when your daughter's probably, I don't know, like 3 or something, you could probably take her bowling. And I don't know if you're good at bowling or mediocre, but I guarantee you when your daughter's 3, she's going to suck at bowling. And so you kind of have two options as a parent there. If you want your daughter to bowl, you could force her to learn technical skill at that age, which she's probably not going to like, but it absolutely will work. You can mandate and say, we're going to follow the Abhi system for bowling, and you are going to do this until you can bowl correctly, or I will not love you. And that will work, right? There's entire, memes around cultures that parent that way. Or here's another thought. You could inflate the bumpers, because what do you really want? do you really want your daughter to become a professional bowler, or do you want her to enjoy going bowling with you? Probably enjoy going bowling with you. So, what's she going to enjoy? Well, when all the pins get knocked over. So, we want to ensure that every time she picks up a ball, it's almost certain all the pins will get knocked over in a way that doesn't insult her and is fun. What's the easiest way to do that? Well, we get the little kid, ball roller. We inflate the bumpers because it's a kid. Like, we're not playing in a competition.
Even
MSPs don't do that enough with their clients. Make it easy for your customers to win. And so that MSP that's standardizing a stack, you need to come in with a full per user HOS model, not make it complicated, and just be like, for this price per person, everything they need is squared away. Don't worry about it.
yep, and
Somebody's
that's actually
starting, we
that
need,
is
we need minimum of 2 days notice. Someone starting in 2 days, not a problem. Your standard machine will be drop shipped, pre-configured for that user because we use, stuff like Roost that configures it. And now what you've said to that client is, I want you to only use the technology that I want you to use, but I'm going to make it so easy for you. I'm going to inflate the bumpers at the bowling alley that, like, even if you suck at this, you're at least going to have some fun and be like, well, okay, that was kind of silly, but that was fun. And so you do
yeah.
that, and you do that with everything in your business. And suddenly you find that you absolutely are having it your way, the way that you feel is the best. Clients are actually pretty
Wait, I
happy
thought we were
about it.
doing McDonald's.
I'm
That's
actually
Burger King.
I'm a secret BK guy, just saying. So the Burger King bacon double cheeseburger is, in my opinion, the best shitty hamburger that anyone makes.
I am also a BK fan specifically because I'm a vegetarian and they're the only burger place that has a veggie burger.
And it's flame broiled, so there's a reasonable chance the flames have burned off the tiny little bits of decaying cow
No,
for you.
actually,
So,
their veggie burgers are just like steam microwaved.
wow.
They're not broiled. They're just
You are committed to
yeah,
disappointment, and I
yes.
applaud you
It
for that.
is, and but it is a nutritious meal that you can get in 5 minutes when you really need to. And as someone that has worked in the service industry and had my own vehicle, being able to roll up to any Burger King in the city and get a meal that's gonna keep me going for the rest of the day means a lot. And I couldn't do that at McDonald's.
Have it your way. Sponsored by Barium.
So
Yes,
speaking
absolutely.
of growth and making money, you're at your MSP. When and like how are you approached to go to the dark side, which I believe was helped the first one there? Or no, it was
No,
OIT.
no,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so after a series of acquisitions and whatnot, our company got rolled up in a PE acquisition, which once again we were very lucky. Just a very kind PE company. We were their first technology product, good culture alignment. They kind of left us alone. That was all luck. I'd love to say it was skill. And we got quite a bit bigger, and we just got to a point where the weight and size of now all these combined, like, medium to medium high maturity MSPs meant there were enough executives turned, like, high level salespeople where top of funnel was just full from a numbers standpoint, just by scale. And so that causes an interesting problem if you are on the operations side of a business. If you now have a very strong top of funnel and low churn, that means you're effectively printing money, which means that now most problems can just be solved with cash, which means that people stop caring as much about the operations side. Not that my former MSP didn't care. It was just no longer exciting to anybody in leadership because, like, why bother? What problems are you having, Dean? Here's money. Go solve it with money. And so I just got burned out from doing that. And I've been friends with Ray Orsini for a long time. Known him from Reddit and various Discords, things like that. And Ray had a staff member that kind of unexpectedly exited his client success department. And Ray was like, "Hey, why don't you come work for me and run my client success department for a while?" I'm like, "Ray, I am a service and operations person. The customer's wrong. I mean, that's the world I live in, is like, the hell with the customer. They didn't follow the process. I can't be in the role that takes the customer's side. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Ah, do it. You won't. Come on," which were the magic words. And so I left to go over there, not really knowing too much about, basics of about VoIP, but not really being an expert in that business. and was there for about half a year while I kind of just helped them restructure what they were doing with client success in a transition period. And then from there, I went back to my old mistress, which was a services business, and joined Helped because I'm a masochist. And I had said never again. And then I did it again. And I said never again after that. And this time I mean it. Um,
I like Helped. Help's a cool.
they're good people, but it's a challenging business. Growing a services business is hard already, and now imagine growing a services business where your customers are other services businesses. We have all the same costs as you, but I can't charge as much as you because you need to buy from me to charge what you're going to charge. That's tough, and they're even more masochists. Anybody who's doing a master MSP or a services to MSPs model really, really loves pain and suffering because it's everything that an MSP entrepreneur is going through with the dial turned up to 10. So bless their hearts for doing that. Yeah, that's how I got over here. Is someone I knew, and a lot of this industry is sadly still, or I suppose positively still, who you know, not necessarily what you know. So never burn bridges, kids. Never burn bridges.
MSP community is much smaller than you think, and word gets around.
I used to tell all of our staff when we were quite a bit bigger at our MSP, because they would, we get the occasional employee that would be like, oh, like, I'm from this state. They can't enforce a non solicitation or non compete here. And some of that's true, but you know what I mean? Like, you get like the average, like 20-year-old kid who's only seen it on Reddit. And I would remind all of them that like that doesn't actually matter because enough people in this industry know each other where it doesn't have to be enforceable in court for me to just call up Ben and be like, "Hey, so I found out that my L2 is leaving to go work for you, and were you aware that they had a non-solicit and non-compete and you know, had some issues here?" And that's all it takes for you to be like, "Oh, no, they didn't tell me any of that. You know what? We're actually going to be retracting our offer of employment." And now they don't have a job, even though nothing was arbitrated in court. So do not burn bridges, kids. And also on the opposite side, how quickly positive news will spread. It's
Mhm.
also important, though, to remember that that is not a value proposition to buy on. Um,
Absolutely. Yep.
and it's even think about your own clients. Like the fact that today they can all probably text you or call you and you'll pick up and you know their whole business, that is de facto not scalable. There will be a day where Barium can't do that.
That
And
is
if
like
that's
the
the
worst
main
thing in the
reason they
world.
bought from you, they'll
Yeah.
churn in the future.
Yeah.
MSPs take that to the extreme. They fetishize vendors and they fetishize those pseudo relationships they have with vendors until the vendors can't maintain them because they've gotten big. And then suddenly, oh, that vendor sold out. They're terrible. And it's like,
Isn't that the whole point of being a
no.
company?
Where if I won't say names on your podcast, but if y'all are students of Reddit, there was a large distributor that for years you will all remember on Reddit was, oh, they're amazing. You can just talk to the reps there. They're the best company ever. Just buy from them. That now suddenly enough time and scale has happened that curtain has been pulled back. And every third comment is, well, maybe perhaps they're not a great distributor. And of course, looking at that, like they've always had those problems. They've always had a kid. What vendor hasn't had payment problems or AR problems or, the support got something wrong? Like they've always had those problems. They're big enough now where you're noticing it. So
No,
just
there's
remember
a
not to
there's a
fetish.
couple players that they've earned their notorious reputation. We won't
Yeah,
name names, even though we
like
could. Everyone
Roost.
knows who we're talking about. Yes. Yes, Roost is the worst company in the world. I would never use Roost in my life.
Universally hated. None of their partners show up and help them with anything.
Literally, the only bad thing I ever hear about Roost is the one thing. The I really want to use it, but I can't afford it yet. That is the only negative thing I ever hear about it.
There's a very simple equation that a lot of MSPs don't do that causes them to say things like, I can't afford that tool. Earlier in my career, when I was doing a little bit of side coaching, Kyle Christensen, who is one of the founders of EmPath, who I've known for a long time.
He has a big side coaching business.
Yeah, that I like to tell him he's wrong. That's how I met Kyle, by the way, was heckling from the crowd all the time and telling him how wrong he was about stuff. So there you go. Do meet your heroes, kids, and tell them how terrible they are. Kyle had made a comment to me because I had said something at a show 7 or 8 years ago where I had there was something, a tool I wanted to buy for personal use for coaching. It might have been like a subscription to Zoom or something, and I was like, I can't afford that. And Kyle was like, "How many clients would you need to pay for that tool?" And I was like, "Oh, well, at the rate I charge, I need this many clients." And it was basically, he was like, "Then go get those clients and sign up for the tool." And he's like, "It's that simple." He's like, you think about what are the costs for the things I need, and I felt I needed that. Okay, so how much money do I need to make to pay for that? And he's like, you can charge more to the people you have, or go get more people at the rate you're charging. Which would you like to do? That's it. We forget that because it can't possibly be that simple. There's got to be some secret code that we need to unlock, but like, that's it.
But isn't it is that complicated. The complicated part comes from thinking that the way that all the successful people do it is not the right way. And I mean that by saying, like, the number one thing is the consistency. It's showing up and it's doing the thing day in, day out. And if you think you can circumvent that, no, you can't. That
Well,
is
at
that
the
is the
beginning of the
thing.
call, like, no one probably wants to play with a by the book wizard or warlock in their D&D party because
Mhm.
those classes suck. The wizard's going to kill everybody in the room, and the warlock is going to kill everybody in the room. And by accident, because someone's going to cast a fireball with a 30-foot range when we're in a broom closet. So, like, a smart player knows not to do that because, that's just stupid. But you don't know
I
that until you've experienced it. And like with the pricing thing, like a smart owner understands that like just because I got a good deal on this SKU doesn't mean I'll always have it. So I probably need to actually add like an 800% margin to this to leave me enough room in case I get screwed. But like that doesn't make sense until you get screwed 2 or 3 times. And then you're like, and now you know. And that only comes with time. So like some of this you just learn as you go. It is what it is.
I got into an argument with somebody, I think it was on Reddit or LinkedIn, I don't know where. It could have been on
Nice.
TikTok
Internet
for all I
fights are the
know.
best.
They were arguing that I don't want people that make mistakes. I want people that just don't make them at all. And I was like, good luck. Like, that's not a human. That's a
There
robot.
are mistakes we don't want people to make. When you were slinging AT&T, we don't want you to learn on the job to just blast a drill through a wall and,
Hmm.
"Oh, I
Right.
hit a water pipe, whoopsie doodle." That's not a mistake we want you to make, period. Because there is no version of that where fixing it doesn't make AT&T and you look like a ginormous asshole. So we then, how do we fix that? We either don't put someone who could make that mistake in a position to make it, or we have sufficient policy in place to generally avoid and basically determine an exception to avoid that mistake. And that's what a lot of folks just forget. Like, keeping that silly analogy, at my MSP, I had a rule. I grew up with tools. I learned very quickly. Most of the staff in my company didn't know how to use tools. So two rules went into place. No ladders over 4 feet while you're on the job site, because our E&O policy is only 1 million, which is not going to cover you falling off a higher ladder than that. And absolutely no one in this building is allowed to ever use a power tool ever at a client site. There's nothing we're doing. You need to use one. And if a tech would come back to me and they'd be like, "Oh, well, I need to mount this to the wall." Absolutely, no, you do not. We do not do that. You're not mounting anything to the wall. You're going to make sure instructions are given to their facilities person. You're going to stay there and babysit. And that might seem obtuse because, like, Abhi could do that. Like, based on his, Abhi could easily mount something to the wall without making a mess. But I knew most of my employees couldn't, and I didn't have the time or desire to teach them how to get around that. So we just eliminate the conditions that could arrive at suddenly having a
Right.
either leaky water pipe or even worse, a poopy pipe in a customer's building.
Going a little bit different route, I was curious, where did your idea start for Spicy Monday? How did that start for you?
I don't remember the very first few posts if it was me or Kyle. I think it was Kyle that had started off using a spicy hashtag, and I sort of was like, "All right, we're gonna pick a day of the week," and made it Spicy Monday and pushed it more on social media. But it was so if we go back to this premise that generally most people in this industry really don't know what they're doing, and even the companies within our industry that have had a lot of success compared to the adult world are still laughably tiny. Even the big boys in this industry are still just teeny tiny little things. And once you get that perspective, and you're like, okay, like there are no true like luminaries here. You know, there is no real like Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett level person walking around our industry. We all just collectively need to Hakuna Artatas. And Kyle and I were like, there's so much preening all the time that no one real talks anymore. So let's start doing that. I was already doing that for a long time on Reddit. I just, going back to being told I shouldn't yell at people, was doing it as Dr. Zoidberg because Dr. Zoidberg was a silly character. So sort of a next manifestation of that was, how do I drop the character and still say the hard truths? Like, oh, what if I just owned it by being like, hey, I'm going to post things where I directly insult you and tell you how dumb it is and give you actionable advice that makes you cry in the shower. I bet people will like that. So that's all. That's all it is.
So I've seen like the MSPT show kind of happen and stuff. Did you just meet Tara at like events, or where did you guys start? Like, hey, this person shares some viewpoints here.
Yeah. So we were, when I was an MSP, we were a very early EmPath customer. I don't know exactly what number, but we were definitely in the first 50. My lead engineer at the time, who discovered EmPath, and Darren in a chat, actually now works there. If you want a fun little full cycle story, that was his dream job. So we got really hooked into the product early on, had a lot of success with it. And then when I was an MSP, of course, I'd stop by their booth and say hi. And at that point, I was yet another customer that comes up. I knew who Tara was, which, I mean, I was just some random customer. She was a crazy hat lady. When I switched over to the vendor side of things, one of the things that a lot of MSPs don't know, Ben obviously will know this now, depending on your role in a vendor, but especially if you go to trade shows, that can be a very, very taxing, time consuming, emotionally and mentally draining experience. It is not a giant party, even though it seems like it is to an MSP. If we only had to do two trade shows a year, it would be. But when, especially for some of these people on the channel where they're spending more weeks away from home than they are at home, other vendors become your friend group, your de facto friend group, and you spend a lot of time around these people, and it's very much starts feeling like the people who were in your dorm or something in college, or like whether or not you would be like friends in the real world, you're sort of forced into friendship. So that's how I really got to know Tara. And the thing I like about Tara is we don't have the same viewpoints on a lot of stuff. We disagree on a lot. We had a very similar journey up through the industry, MSP to vendor, operations skewed, not the most technical person at our companies while still being, technically literate. But she's from the deep South. I'm from, the second most liberal state in the United States.
You're
And
from the deep north.
yeah, but not too deep, because if you get super deep north, it is like being back in Alabama. It is wild. Go to super northern Maine and you will start hearing like,
That's like me down here in Florida, right? If I go a little bit north of me, all of a sudden I'm more south.
so I got to know her, around that. And I just liked that we had a similar experience and agreed on a lot, but also agreed not on a lot. And she was very confident to express those things and to not just back down. A lot of people, if I overpower them in a conversation, will just sort of be like, well, okay, he thinks he's right, so I'll let him have it. Tara won't.
I think that's one thing I love about you
Yeah.
is like if you and I disagree on something, you will happily go at it and fight, and we'll have this heated argument. But then once we figure out what the thing is, like we'll go back to having drinks.
Well,
Right?
I want to know. I look at it like you clearly have. We're all idiots, but I also assume that everybody around me isn't. So you clearly have a viewpoint. You didn't manifest it out of nothing. You either figured it out or heard it somewhere. You clearly believe in it. I don't. What am I missing? So like arguing for me a lot of times is getting you to teach me what I'm missing, because maybe you know something I don't. Maybe there's a use case or a viewpoint I haven't considered that hearing you articulate it back, I'll be like, oh, I had never thought of that,
There's
I
something
don't know that I would agree with Abhi everywhere, but he's absolutely right here, and I could learn from this. That's
or it's just
typically why I get into arguing.
I hate the phrase agree to disagree. It's like, no, I'm not. We're not. That's not the thing. You need to be able to comprehend and understand my viewpoint, just as I need to comprehend and understand your viewpoint, because then we're both right. We can both agree, that our way is the correct way based on the information given,
I'll
right?
give you an additional free tip on this episode of the Panda Awards Show. If you like always being right, here is my pro tip on how to always be right 100% of the time, no matter what, both in the moment and in hindsight. If I get into an argument with you or disagreement with you where it turns out that you're right, well, I chose to be friends with you or talk to you. So therefore, I chose your viewpoint. So I'm right by proxy. So I'm still right. So there you go, my friends. That's how you get to be always right, even when you're wrong.
I thought you were going to say like teach kindergartners or something.
No, 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 because this works so much better. So, like, let's say you get into a fight with Ben about something, and you ultimately concede that, all right, like based on the evidence or whatever, Ben is correct, and now you're defeated. I was wrong. My deeply held belief was wrong. Now you have a light. You can say, ah, but I chose to be friends with Ben, and I chose to adopt and learn from Ben. Therefore, I chose Ben's correctness. Therefore, I am right by proxy. Ah, the warm embrace of correctitude. It's mine again. My unabashed record of being right 100% of the time continues. Way to go, me.
I love that. I love that.
I'm saying that in jest. I don't actually walk around that way, or do I?
Are you just in front of your bathroom mirror every morning with your self affirmations?
Do affirmate? Does that work?
They
Eh,
work if you
if you
affirmate that
believe.
they work.
Manifestations and crystals. Now you sound like my friend Alex Boyd.
So
Time to go to
mm,
Burning Man.
That is a lot of work and a commitment. Good for her. I can do that.
So I guess wrapping this up, if people want to find you, where do they find you, Dean?
Oh, well, I'm probably already hiding out in the bushes outside your house, whispering operations advice into your window. The call is not coming from inside your house, but it is coming from me complaining about the quality of your metrics. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I am at Dr. Zoidberg. You can find me on Reddit. Find me on Discord. You can hit me up at dean at empathmsp.com. I'm in all of these places. It's not hard. You'll find me.
Dean, I absolutely love always having a conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us a little dose of Dr. Zoidberg.
Thanks for having me on.
We'll see everyone next week.
Take care, everybody.